what's happening right now with the transfer portal and why I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a good thing overall for college football. What is up, everybody? It is Jake with Master of Football, back at it again. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to be up to date on all things college football, hit that red subscribe button. You will not be disappointed. Also hit the like button too, and follow on Twitter/X. That fam is growing. And if you like EA college football content, go check out the MF Film Room in my description there. But beyond all that, let's get into the video about college football. All right, guys, and we are in middle of December, close to the holiday season. We're less than a week away from Christmas for any of you out there that don't know that. I looked at the clock and I was like, geez, this thing's sneaking up on us. But I wanted to make sure I came here to defend something right now, because there is as you can see right now, college football needs help with its calendar. I'm not the only one that said it. Josh Pate has said it. Joel Klatt has said it. A lot of college football people out there, like coaches, have said the fact that, unfortunately, right now, the calendar and the activities that you need to have for the calendar and the people who are in charge of enforcing the calendar don't see eye to eye, as we say right now. So with that, we're talking about the transfer portal, because as at this point, most games, how many bowl games right now are being affected by the transfer portal? It is innumerable. However, I want to make sure that I am going to take an opportunity here to defend the transfer portal, especially because I've got the allyship of my friend, Mr. Joel Klatt. We're going to get into his quote, and then we're going to go through kind of what's happening right now with the transfer portal and why I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a good thing overall for college football. So the first one here from Mr. Joel Klatt just yesterday: because of NIL and I don't know what that means, transfer portal, what you're seeing in CFB, in college football, is starting talent to spread out across the country. That's a tremendous benefit to college football overall. Most people just like to talk about these things in a negative light, but there are positives for players and fans. And as much as people say, oh yeah, there's positives for the players, they're out there chasing NIL money, they're doing this, they're doing that. The fans have to suffer. Well, unfortunately for you, though, you negative Nancys out there, I have plenty of evidence here to the contrary. But first thing we're going to do is kind of go through the general vibe from the other perspective here of the transfer portal. One of the big ones here was with the fact that Caleb Williams is leaving USC. Caleb Williams came over to USC from Oklahoma. He's with Lincoln Riley. He is graduating. He's not necessarily graduating. He's going to the NFL draft. We already know that. Malachi Nelson was originally supposed to redshirt, and then he was going to be the starter. And again, he's going to go out there and play. He's got Zachariah Branch. He's got a lot to work with there under Lincoln Riley's system. But even he's entering the transfer portal. And with the fact that I also heard Damani Jackson as well. Lincoln Riley's having an issue out there at USC. But again, a lot of people are saying that, again, this type of movement, this type of a player moving and leaving, number one player in last year's recruiting class, is kind of taking away from bowl season at this point. And at Barstool Sports, Brandon Walker had the same perspective here. Let's get a load of what he has to say.
Bowl season is officially dead. As a thing, it's dead forever, I think. Because December is no longer about the college football bowl games. December belongs to the transfer portal.
Again, you see how many people enter the transfer portal with all that. He's not off base there. Now, again, he said never, which, of course, never say never. But, again, he did.
That is the only thing that really matters right now. These teams are getting ready to play games. So many of these games that already happened just don't matter because their quarterbacks are already in the portal. This December, unless you are in the playoff, it is now about your next team and not about the team that you still have.
Yeah.
So the portal's going wild right now. Colorado's doing great in the portal. Louisville's doing great in the portal. But I hate what I'm about to have to say, but I am going to say it. I'd be lying if I wasn't jealous about what's happening in Oxford, because Ole Miss is destroying the transfer portal. They're killing it. They're getting everybody they want. They're getting probably going to get the number one guy, who's Walter Nolan out of A&M. They've got a guy from Florida, a couple guys from Tennessee. They got Juice Wells from South Carolina. Whoever they want, they're getting. Lane Kiffin has figured this thing out and is dominating college football right now.
And for Brandon Walker, as much as it's a negative, he said a lot of right things there. Continuing on with that, he's not the only one. He's talking from an SEC perspective. He covers a lot of SEC football. But in addition to the G5 is having a hard time holding on to players because of NIL money, because of collectives, how many people are throwing money out there, how much tampering is happening. You see this. We see Colorado State head coach Jay Norville breaks his silence about the transfer portal situation. He says, quote, "We are fighting for our lives." Says that he recently opened up about the influence of NIL deals in luring players in the transfer portal. With the change in rules surrounding NIL deals of players, many stories have started emerging about how Power 5 teams are trying to poach players through intermediaries and lure them into joining the transfer portal with big NIL payments. That's supposed to be illegal, that luring, but as to whether or not we're going to have enforcement, that's an NCAA question. I think we all know what's going to happen there. Probably nothing. Jay Norville had his own fair share of experience with this situation with some of his starting players. His quarterback, Braden Fowler Nicolosi, was allegedly offered 600 G's, a deal from another program about leaving the Rams, according to his head coach. Colorado State was a 5-7 team this last season in the Mountain West. It said he also talked about how he needs to open up with fans about NIL needs in order to maintain a quality roster and not let the monetarily rich programs hoard their players. And again, he comes down here with this and he says 600K offer to a QB, top 12 players. We're fighting for our lives. Talks about the Wolves attempting to poach the roster. In addition to that, we saw the fact that with the transfer portal, starting in 2018 and coming up until now, it seems to only be growing at this point. This article came from May of this year, talks about the transfer portal being in overdrive. This is the transfer portal. So right now there was about a month period in December, and then there's a 2-week period in June and the early summer. And we come out here and check this out, and we see the fact that it says 8,699 NCAA football players have entered the transfer portal between August 1st of 2022 and May 1st of 2023. So what is that? That puts us at, that's 9 months? That's a 5.5% increase over last year's then record, 8242, and more than double the tally of the inaugural 2018-2019 title, 4,076. Looking only at FBS transfers shows a similar increase with a record of 3,284 players entering the portal. That's up 6.5% from the year before and nearly double the tally from 2018-2019's total. The wild stat, it says here that 3,284 figure means over 20% of all FBS players are looking to transfer this offseason, and it's not just bench warmers either. The top 20 teams in the 247's transfer rankings added a combined 102 players rated at least 4 out of 5 stars, including 5 schools that added at least 7 such players. Those 5 schools: USC, Auburn, LSU, Ole Miss, and Florida State. And in combination with that, considering the fact that so many people enter in there, there's a lot of smaller schools that are getting worried here that they're just going to get plucked by the bigger schools. Basically what it's going to be is it's going to be a G5 to P5 plucking by them entering the portal, getting a bunch of money, and leave. So basically G5 programs are going to be, so to say, like farm teams for these bigger programs who don't really know how to recruit and develop players. So we come down here and see what we had. I mean, this last year was Zachary Franklin from UT San Antonio to Ole Miss. We got Carson Steele from Ball State to UCLA, Devontae Walker to North Carolina, Dante Cephas to Penn State. You see the fact that all of those players down there, you see that they are basically saying, all right, so here's the deal. You come out here, you play at Kent State, you have a ball in the year, you enter the portal, you get 500 G's, something like that, as opposed to going to North Carolina and working your way up through the roster. A lot of players are saying, screw that, dude. I'm just going to try and get played and get paid. Now, I've set a pretty bleak picture there with all of those things. And again, those are the negative aspects of it, unfortunately, here. In the same way, in the NFL, when you give a 21, 22, 23-year-old guy a bunch of money, he's going to blow it. He's not going to put it in a 401k. He's going to absolutely blow it. Imagine that. Now, instead of 21, 22, 23, it's 18, 19, and 20 years old. 3 years, 4 years less of intelligence, wisdom, and so on. You're going to get just as bad decisions. People are going to be lured in with a ham sandwich and here and there. All of that crap is going to happen. But remember here, I'm telling you, I think that what's going to happen here is, although the transfer portal numbers will go up, people are slowly starting to learn from the transfer portal. In addition to like how you're going to move teams around, what you're going to do here, I want to bring up an article about the NFL to kind of bring the similarities, because a lot of people said, oh, well, NIL is basically free agency, whereas recruiting is the draft. And it's kind of similar in many respects. And what I'm basically saying here is the fact that if you know anybody in the NFL, you still need to build through the draft, aka recruiting, not NIL and transfer portal players. This was an article here on May 24th of 2021 talking about the fact, looking at the economics of roster construction. Which players should teams draft and which should they go after in free agency? And basically it brought down here to this graph that broke down in terms of the salary cap benefit and the percentage of top 20 veterans acquired via free agency. What it basically said here was the fact that certain positions that are hard to find, quarterback, edge rusher, receiver, things like that. You have to go and do the draft. Whereas other positions, as an example, right tackle is something that it would be better to find in free agency as opposed to trying to draft a guy, put him there, and the bust rate, whatever it is. Basically, what they're saying here is that certain positions, very, very valuable positions that are hard to find, it is better to find them through the recruiting avenue as opposed to the transfer portal avenue. How I think this differs from the college to the NFL is the fact that college, you don't have the ability to lock somebody down, whereas the NFL, you do. So with that, we see the fact that there actually is a lot of benefit from quarterbacks going from team to team. Basically, if I'm a backup here, I'm a starter here, I'm going to go over to this team. So we have seen the fact that through the transfer portal, the most successful position to add in the transfer portal, bar none, was quarterback, because you basically get able to elevate somebody. You're also not even necessarily going to elevate them. You're giving them the opportunity to play. Aside from that, I would argue, though, that you see the fact that most of these depth positions that are going throughout here are going to these other teams here. So free agency, NIL, at the end of the day, if a player had to choose between getting NIL money and sitting on the bench or transferring away from Alabama and playing, so far, it seems to be the opposite. You wouldn't assume that people are just going to sit on the bench and get paid at Alabama. They're trying to play right away. And how do you say I justify that? Well, I'll justify that with just a couple pictures here. We're going to go through the 2016 Week 14 CFP rankings for college football. So we can see this right here. This is 2016. Back in the day here, we had 1 through 8. So I want to check out 1 through 8 because there's a lot of really interesting stories here. First of all, check this out, okay? So number 7 lost to number 3 by 3 touchdowns at home. Number 5 lost to Michigan. Number 6 by 39. Number 6 lost to an 8-5 Iowa team, 13-14 on the road. Number 3 lost to number 2, 31-0, and the number 2 won. Basically, at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say here is 2016, 2 years before the transfer portal, there was really only 2 teams that probably had a shot. Ohio State, Washington, good for you for making it to the playoff, but at the end of the day, we really knew Alabama and Clemson had the only real opportunity to win the national championship. That's 2 years before the transfer portal. Now we go to right now, 5 years after the transfer portal in 2018 was implemented, and we're seeing a completely different college football world. This is the CFP rankings from this year, and it is a much different story than 2016. As an example here, we have 11-2, number 8, Oregon. If I would have told you at the beginning of November that this team was in the national championship and they won it, not anybody would be surprised. Of their 2 losses, 2 of them were the number 2 team in the country, 2 3-point losses, one at their place and another one at a neutral site. That was Oregon. Then Ohio State only got a single-digit loss to the number 1 team in the country. You got Georgia. They lost to Alabama in a single-digit score. Florida State won every single game. They're not even in the national championship. Right now, realistically, of the national although the Jordan Travis situation, I understand all that. But looking at this right here, if this was a full playoff between these 8 teams, other than Florida State after the Jordan Travis injury, it's not an outside chance that each one of these teams could win the national championship here. That's 5 years after the transfer portal went. Because remember here, Alabama, that extra defensive line they probably would have had, that extra receiver, that extra running back, whoever it is, now they transfer to play right away. As an example here, within these top teams here, Michigan recruited their quarterback, Alabama recruited their quarterback, Georgia recruited their quarterback, and Ohio State is. But of the other 4 teams, Bo Nix, transfer, Jordan Travis, transfer, Quinn Ewers, transfer, Michael Penix Jr., transfer. All of those players. Again, most of these teams were built through recruiting, but for quarterback, it's not a bad idea to bring somebody in from the transfer portal. And for all of you G5 teams worried, what all of our players are getting offered. You remember here at the beginning of this video where we basically said that Jay Norville was worried that his top 12 players were getting offered to leave the university. Again, 5-7 team, Mountain West. So how in the hell is he going to keep Tory Horton? He is an all-time player for this team. There's no way they're going to be able to keep him. And he decides to stay here. Again, with this, whatever the situation is, if they offered him NIL, if he's like, I'm going to get featured, I'm going to improve my draft stock, whatever it is, he ultimately decided that the juice was not worth the squeeze. I suspect in the future, more players are going to pull a Tory Horton. You're like, I've seen these players that transfer to these programs. They go to an offense that's different. They don't highlight my skill set. I'm not able to be successful. I'm not going to leave. And Tory Horton certainly has a market out there because he is special. Let's not forget here that Tory Horton has 2 consecutive 1,100-yard, 8-touchdown seasons for Colorado State. He's 6'2", 190. Your boy is a baller. And remember here, everybody remembers that game against Colorado where your boy had 13 grabs. Excuse me, I hate to shortchange him. He had 16 grabs for 133 yards and 1 touchdown in that legendary game against the Colorado Buffaloes here. This is this type of guy. So for him, you've already seen he's already played 4 years. You know he was offered money NIL to leave, and you also know he had the opportunity to go to the NFL as well. Checking out here, herosports.com, of the top Mountain West big board prospects for the NFL draft, he was number 1. I would argue that Mohamed Kamara, their edge rusher, he's not even on here, should be number 1. But I am trying to say the fact that, remember here, Tory Horton had an opportunity to leave a 5-7 Mountain West team and get more NIL money elsewhere. He had an opportunity to probably enter the NFL draft. He said no to both of them. Does this mean that Colorado State alumni ponied up some money? Probably. Does this mean the fact that he's going to have some featured, whatever it is, whatever the combination is of that stuff? He said no to the NFL. He said no to the transfer portal. He said no to probably more money to come back to Colorado State. And he's not the only one. Don't even get me started about my boy Ashton Genty. Ashton Genty, who a rumor was your boy after leading the FBS in broken tackles, having 1,900 total yards on the season, and is going to be probably a Heisman Trophy, dark horse entering next season. He was offered apparently a 7-figure deal in NIL to leave the team, and he ultimately stayed. Now, that's because he got himself a 6-figure deal and a couple nice things there. But remember there, whatever it is, for these G5 teams, if you're willing to pony up, the juice is not worth the squeeze, that a lot of these players are slowly starting to realize this. I'm telling you right now, as much as these are small examples here, I think that Joel Klatt is right in the fact that we are seeing more competitiveness, we're seeing more parity, we're seeing players have an opportunity to leave and still stay. I think that we're slowly going to learn in the same way that 30 for 30 broke down. Like, this is what happens with players. This is how they lose their money. This is the traps. I think the traps of the transfer portal are going to be found out. There's still going to be a record number of people entering in here, but I think that the smart ones now are starting to realize, the grass might not always be greener on the other side. So you think about 2016, there was basically only 2 teams who had an opportunity to win the national championship. People will say Ohio State. People will say Washington. I'm sorry, good for you. Here's your toy with your Happy Meal. Unfortunately, Clemson beat Ohio State 31-0 in the CFP playoff game there. So with that, 2023 right now, if Oregon was in the national championship, let's just say it was an 8-team bracket right now, nobody would be surprised if Oregon won it, and they're the 8th seed in the nation right now. With that, the transfer portal, it does create some upheaval. It's hard to fall in love with certain players because they leave, they stay, whatever it is, but I do know that parity is coming to college football, despite the fact we haven't had it for the longest time. The SEC still might win it this year, but parity is here thanks to the transfer portal, because as much as people want to get paid, they also, more than anything, want to play. All right, you guys get in the comments and let me know what you guys think. I'd really appreciate it, but that's it for me, guys. I will see you guys later. I am out.